Well, should we get going a little bit early then?
You mean ahead of schedule? This is unheard of.
That's good, because then I can go entertaining then.
You're going to hit the pub, did you say?
No, I wasn't saying that word down. I was entertaining, yes. Socializing.
It shows how much more efficient your life is when you have a TAM in it. So, we're ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Let's kick off 5 minutes early. There you go. Let's set a new precedent.
Yeah. So.
Hope that entertaining isn't the full Monty though, Dave.
Marvelous. Right. Let's got the screen up. And now for something completely different. Throughout the day, we've had some really good technical sessions. Obviously, we had Duncan's, and we've had some in-depth ones on Cloud Foundation, and we've had a great session on Kubernetes, and we had the end using one. What I noticed of those sessions, that quite a lot of the presenters had the job title of TAM, and not everyone's necessarily sort of come across that. What is a TAM? I've been one myself, and I've joined by a few more on this sort of mini panel, really, to talk about what it is, how you get into it, what happens when you do get into it, was it a good idea, and many other questions besides. So start with a few introductions, really. As you haven't met me before, I'm surprised, but you should have. My name's Chris Dearden. I'm currently not a TAM. I've actually become a channel SE again for a security company, but I'm joined by Ian. If you want to introduce yourself briefly.
Yes, thanks, Chris. So I'm Ian Sanderson. I'm a technical account manager at Island Cloud. If the accent doesn't give it away, I'm based just outside of Newcastle.
And Matt.
Howdy all, my name is Matt Crape. I'm a senior TAM that works for VMware. I'm based out of Toronto area of Canada.
Dave?
Hello. So this is, as Chris said, something different for me because I'm generally presenting on mental health actually on the VMUG, so this is a bit different for me. So Dave Marley, I'm a senior technical account manager at VMware. I'm based in the northwest of England.
And last but not least, Paul.
Hi, my name's Paul Robinson. I'm also a senior technical account manager at VMware. Unlike Dave, who's up in the north, I'm based down in the south on the sunny coast down in Weymouth.
Fantastic. So we've got a few sort of main points that we'll chew the cud over initially, and then I've got a couple of questions and a few wild cards of my own. And really starting off with, how do you become a TAM, and what is it really? That sort of job title, technical account manager. Job titles can mean and do lots of different things. But how did you discover about it, and what did you learn it to be, as it were? I don't know who wants to take that. I'm not going to point it to a specific person to start with.
I'll start then, Chris. It's quite funny. Absolutely no idea. If I go back so I've been in VMware about 6 years. Before that, I was at Fujitsu. Well, it was ICL and Fujitsu for 21 years. I started as a graduate. Lots of different roles, from techie manager to I was a principal architect in R&D for the last 6 to 8 years. Actually, Chris, when I met you, when you worked for another company a long time ago. I did have TAMs from different vendors, but what I will say, they were very, very light touch type of TAMs. So I didn't really have any idea what they were. And then I seen a job that became available at VMware, and I just applied for it. So no idea going back 6-8 years.
You went in pretty blind to it.
Absolutely. And it's quite funny. If I go back again to when I looked at the job description, I still have it because I'm sad like that. I think it was quite woolly at the time. I only started to get my head around a little bit from the interview process. And then even then, when I got offered the job and took the job, I'll be honest and say I jumped into the job role completely blind. And it wasn't what I thought it was. And that's not a negative, by the way, that's a positive.
Yeah, I think it's potentially one of those roles that different companies will interpret in different ways. So my first exposure to someone who had that job title was I was working for Deloitte many years ago. And there was a guy who sat in the US office who was paid by Microsoft and he was a TAM. Not entirely sure what he seemed to do, but he seemed to be pretty happy about it. But they weren't particularly technically involved. Yet, if you just to look at the caliber of some of the sessions we've had today, it's obvious that quite a lot of TAMs are very technical. So I suppose I started to look at it as that mix between a technical role and a more relationshipy, talky, hand wavy sort of role, without going down the marketing route. So still directly involved in customers, rather than, I suppose, there's some of the roles which are a bit more R&D type based. I don't know if anyone else had a similar experience on that.
Well, I just want to echo what you've both said there, especially you, Dave. So my background is, the roles I've had previously, they've all been very technical, been like support services manager, delivery consultant, technical pre-sales. I just got to a point in my career where needing to know the nuts and bolts of how something works just wasn't for me anymore. Now, I'm not saying that I don't enjoy that, but like really like knowing registry settings to tweaking things out, it's just not that much of an interest. But yeah, I came across the TAM role at Island. I was like, okay, I wasn't looking for it, but I looked at the job description. I was like, oh, I've done that. Let's have a shot at it and see what it is. So yeah, I guess I've just stumbled across the role and now here I am.
Excellent. Matt, Paul, anything to add?
I was going to say mine was a bit opposite. Actually, I didn't stumble across the role. The role stumbled across me. I initially applied for VMware as a senior consultant within PSO. So I went through all their sort of joining, sort of process for interviews, which you have an hour-long technical interview on the telephone, then through to actual interview with what would have been my line manager if I'd gone with PSO, which involved doing a presentation, then a full whiteboard session, then following an interview at that point in time. At that point in time, I didn't have that much customer-facing experience because I'd been an internal designer at a large retailer. So at that point, I didn't get the job. But 2 months later, I got contacted by the recruitment within VMware to ask if I wanted to go for the TAM role. And of course I did, and I haven't looked back. Yes, like Dave said, the role's slightly different. It's Ian said as well, it's still technical, but we're not hands-on. So it's you don't have to know stuff in depth. But yeah, so that was my journey. It was slightly different from the other two. Funny enough, I did have a TAM when I was a customer. And I now actually work directly with my TAM now because he's moved on into a different role within VMware. He's been here about 12 years now. And I work quite closely with him on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I'll just pipe in with my experience as well. I come from the customer side, or I was kind of started off tech support, did sysadmin, eventually moved to IT management. So it's still fairly hands-on, but one step removed. It's a little less technical. I had staff for that, but I'd still dabble on things. But I didn't really know what TAM was. All I knew is, hey, that sounds pretty cool. You hear about TAMs here, you hear about TAMs there, especially around VMworld. You hear about TAM Customer Day, for example, but I didn't really know what that was. I knew a lot of folks who worked for VMware. Some of them were TAMs. A role opened up in my area, and a friend of mine, a lot of us might know him, Ariel Sanchez Mora. He's like, "Hey, dude, you've got to apply for this." So applied for it. Didn't really know what I was getting into, but at the end of the day, I've always enjoyed helping people in some form or another, and that seemed to align with what the TAM does. I think one important note to touch on is, at least at VMware, we're post-sales in the sense of we're not there to necessarily drive the sales process. We're not commission-based or anything like that, but rather we're really there to help the customer get the value out of whatever they do purchase from VMware, and maybe open up the door to new technologies and all that sort of stuff. So echoing some of the other points that were made, we're not necessarily super deep on the technical side, as in, we're not the engineers from the R&D side of things, but we do also interface with them a lot. If it's a matter of bringing requirements back to them, or sometimes it's just a matter of, hey, need a roadmap session, depending on how deep you need to go. Absolutely, we can deliver that for you.
Can I just reiterate what Matt said? And it's a really, really important point. What he just said about the fact TAMs aren't sales, or generally not. Well, they're not in VMware. Some organizations they may well be. I think that goes and helps tenfold with customers, because sometimes customers, look, end of the day, businesses are there to make money. Customers are there to be successful. But sometimes, obviously, customers think, oh, where's the salesperson trying to sell something? Just again, that's not the TAM, because we're not, we don't get paid on sales. We've got nothing to do with sales. Yes, we want our company to be successful, and we want the customers to be successful. I think that helps tenfold with the relationships we build with customers.
Yeah, just building on that, Dave, that was something that kind of steered me towards this role as well. Once I came across it, I probably could have gone down the sales route, but I didn't want to become a full-on salesperson. You're right. There's that trust that you build with the customer, because you're not there to ultimately sell something. Yes, you might identify a post-sales opportunity, but then you hand that off to the relevant person. It is about helping the customer at the end of the day.
Something that is sometimes worth bearing in mind is that a TAM is often a paid for resource, and can be included, if a sort of a enterprise licensing agreement has been set up, that may well include a certain amount of TAM resource, or TAMs might be allocated as almost to a premium marquee type customers. So yeah, I think they're very much almost on the cost rather than revenue generating directly side of things.
And Chris, I think that's another valid point. I think that's why when you asked the first question about, why do we become a TAM? As I said at the start, my experience of a TAM, they weren't paid for TAMs. I got them as a bolt on to Product X that I'd purchased when I was at Fujitsu, whereby now, as you've just said, TAM is generally, I'm not here to say it right across the business, but generally across VMware, and obviously where Ian is as well, it's a paid for service. So it's very, very different. And as I say, the little tiny chunk of add-on you get when you bought Product X or Software Y. Yeah, they're sort of, depending on where in the business the TAM is attached, very often they are part of the customer success organization, so tangential to support, for example. But other organizations, I've seen them more tangential to sales, and TAMs I've come across them where they are measured on their account's performance, the retention of that account and the growth of that account. Not necessarily that they only get their variable part of the salary if the customers grow, but if a customer leaves, particularly as we move more to subscription-based licensing models, it's very important that a customer continues to use the product. So if they stop using the product, and you have a way of helping them, to maintain that customer retention beyond day-to-day support resources, that's where I've seen the TAM model made use of without it being a paid resource, because it does essentially pay for itself once it's been, if they are effective in keeping customer retention. I think obviously VMware's moving towards a subscription-y type model, and as a services provider, I'd imagine Ireland is doing something pretty similar with that, Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess where Ireland maybe differs a little to VMware is my customer base is split into two camps. One, it's a bolt-on attached to a service it's purchased, but also those are the customers that we deem would be a good fit for a TAM as well as a value-add bolt-on. Well, I'm a bunch of value-add to that account to help with that retention. You're right. So the way I like to look at it is I'm an extension of whoever that customer's team is. If I think something's a good idea, I'll say it is. If I think something's a bad idea, equally, I'll say I think that's a bad idea. Have you considered this? It's impartial advice as well, from my point.
Yeah. So whether you sort out the TAM Life, or whether, as in Paul's case, TAM Life sort you out, and you've joined up as a technical account manager, how did the reality meet up to the expectations in terms of what you needed to know, what you needed to do, and the types of people you needed to interface with?
I think it was a shock, being honest, Chris. I will personally say, and everybody's got their own little journey, because my understanding what a TAM was quite woolly. I'll be honest and say I don't really think and it wasn't a bad move, by the way. I think I've made a good move. I don't think I grasped how varied the TAM role is. If you look at the analogy of wearing different hats, and we all do it on a daily basis, I think I've got a wardrobe full of about 1,000 different hats for different customers. And every day you put a different hat on so many times, it's unbelievable. I think the TAM is a major mix of, and these aren't weighted perfectly, by the way, of technical, business, strategic, and lots of relationship elements. I didn't think the TAM was such a go-to person. And yeah, I think it was a massive shock to me. I'll be honest and say, when I joined 6 years ago, I think I'm going to say the word overwhelmed. And that isn't in a bad way. Firstly, VMware is a large company. The product set, look, before I joined VMware, I thought I knew VMware's products really, really well. How wrong I was, being honest. On my first day, I think I fell off my chair. And then I think I soon learned that we don't need to know everything. We just need to be able to articulate a good proportion of it. We have a massive, there's a big team supporting the TAM structure, towards our customers. But yeah, massive shock to me. And whenever somebody joins within our team, the first thing I says is don't get overwhelmed. So yeah, big shock.
Yeah, as a techie, we want to be able to see all the nuts and bolts and know where all the various bells and whistles are. But to actually sort of tone yourself down and realize that as long as you can understand the nature of a question or a problem that the customers come up with, and understand enough about the organization to get the answer. So you don't have to know the answer yourself, but you do have to know where to get it from. Yeah.
I mean, look, VMware is a large company, and I think one of the best attributes of a TAM, I suppose, is the customers to realise we're the interface into the business. Unfortunately, it takes a bit of time to know the right people to go to, but you get there in the end.
Yeah, top skill set of being able to search Jira and Confluence to find stuff. I think that's probably the best skill that any TAM can have, is can you find stuff in Jira that's actually relevant?
Yeah, it's true.
I'll echo a lot of Dave's thoughts as well. In that it sounds cliche, but no two customers are the same, and some of them might require, let's say, a lot more hand-holding, which is fine. They're paying for the TAM service if that's how they want to use it. Great. Some of them might be very hands-off and say, we'll call you when we need something. Okay, if that's what you want, if that's what keeps a customer happy, great. We have deliverables that we try to deliver. A lot of customers see tremendous value in them. But at the end of the day, I sort of take the approach of I am what my customer needs me to be. And that could vary from week to week, from day to day. Sometimes they might need me to put some extra pressure on support, or sometimes it's just, even being the middle person from them to support, say, hey, we don't want to be on the call for 4 hours with the customer. Let me hop on a call with you, tech support, and I'll relay what we've done, what problems we have, and what the business impact is, right? That's one of those things as TAMs, we're really there to help understand the customer, their business, and so forth. And when they open up a ticket with GSS, for example, they may not be apparent what the actual business impact is. So we add value there. Other times it might just be a matter of, hey, let's take a look at your license usage. Maybe you're paying for more licenses than you need. So it's really about trying to find the value. The customer doesn't always necessarily know where they need that help. And, as TAMs, we're really there to kind of, mold and shape ourselves into how can we help bring you a lot of the value.
And just from my perspective, just to frame the TAM role facing inwards back to Ireland and kind of where that role sits and who I work with, and I believe the same could be said for VMware, is the teams that I interface with certainly are the sales team, the solution architect team, the dev team, the product management team. You're gathering all of these, I guess, metrics and feedback from those customers who you're helping with their day-to-day challenges, and feeding that back into the organization as, maybe is this how we could improve a product, or this isn't working quite right on our portal. Dev team, can you have a look at this? Or, oh, hey, look, there's an opportunity here maybe to flip the customer to a better product that would suit their needs. Better to the sales team. It's you get to touch every part of an organization that you work for, I believe, in the TAM role. So it's quite good. It's varied. And as Dave said, many hats to wear for many customers as well.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's many hats to wear. You're like Dave also mentioned, and Matt, you're the go-to guy. That's not just for your customers, but that's also the internal teams as well. So yeah, you've got at first initially it's like, whoa, well overwhelming, but it's over time you pick it up, it becomes second nature, and it's like Matt said, building relationships with your customer and different from one day to the next. It was totally different going from being somebody that's sort of doing pure techie to then going, it's more about relationships as well as the tech. So yeah.
So when you're trying to sort of work out how to manage a customer, and whether they're going to be a customer that is going to require a lot more contact time than others, how do you measure or monitor their engagement? Do you look at support tickets? Do you look at if you've got metrics around if there's any SaaS products involved? Do you look at SaaS metrics to see, well, actually, they're logging in every day, they're using the platform pretty heavily, or is there something else that you use as a metric to work out how much engagement to give a customer?
I mean, that's a hard one, actually, Chris. Wasn't ready for that one. I'm not here to say this is all pre-described.
I was going to say, yeah, Chris. So my customer's a dark site. It's a large dark site. So I can't, like you're saying, using metrics and stuff like that, I can't. So it's building those relationships with the customer. It's ensuring that you've got regular contact points with the customer and going through how they're, what are their pain points? What does their roadmap look like over the next, month, year or so? And keeping those regular contact with the customer and going in and making sure they're hitting those milestones that they said. So yeah, unfortunately, my customer is not going to use SaaS. There's no metrics that I can go in and look at. So it's just building relationships with the customer and having regular contact with the customer for themselves.
Have you managed that over the last couple of years? Because assuming as a dark site, that makes
it's been difficult because obviously with over the last couple of years doing things over the internet, there's some conversations that can't be had. So it has had a bit of an effect on my relationship with the customers. I mean, now that things have opened up, then things hopefully will get back. I can go on site now. And like we said before, I'm actually sort of in some of the business areas that I'm dealing with in my customer that I'm seen as part of their team. I have a laptop, so I can be on their systems, so I can get emails. So I have that externally as well. During the last couple of years, and also pass to walk on, to go on site to see my customers. So it's all about maintaining that relationship and them knowing that you're there if they need you as well.
I think, Chris, following on from what Paul said, I've had a bit of a think now, actually. I think one thing to understand, because look, metrics are metrics. Paul has just said a real good one about relationships. I think communication is key. And don't forget, right, a customer has invested quite heavily within the TAM service. It's not cheap. And what the TAM and the customer wants is a common goal. And what's that? That's a successful customer. So I think moving on from what Paul said is communication and outcomes and measurability. Because when I sit down, I've reviewed with all my customers, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, generally quarterly for bigger reviews. But we have key achievements that we want to achieve together, basically stuff that's achievable. There's no point writing a big whiteboard of lists of things because it's not achievable, and it is generally 2 or 3 points. That's manageable because at the end of the quarter we have a tick in a box and we know what we've achieved. Sometimes that doesn't happen and that rolls over to the next quarter. So I think, yeah, we can get stats. I think communication, it's keeping that channel open, and Paul's just alluded to a really good one, what you've just described over the last 2 years with the pandemic. I work in the financial industry, so my customers are generally financial ones. It's been very, very difficult. However, we are opening up again and going on site, as you can see today, with me being in a hotel room. So communication and relationships, I think that's how we measure things.
Okay, awesome. Let's put the shoe on the other foot and think about the TAM from a customer's perspective. So, for those that aren't the TAM, and you may have access to one, or you may have listened to some of this and thought, actually, that might be something that could be of any use. What is that direct value to a customer? What can they get out of having a TAM other than an invite to an extra meal at VMworld?
I think the key word with this is that the TAM is an investment from a company, and it's about long-term relationships with customers. That's what they're going to get out of it. If they think a TAM's going to come out and change the world in 3 months, it won't happen. One of my customers I've had for 6 years, doesn't matter which, again, financial one. To me, it's long-term relationships. It's me helping them drive their business, because in turn they drive VMware's business. For instance, they drive the TAM business.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, and going back to what we were saying prior to this, communication is so key, and it's important to set the expectations, right? We're not just going to walk in and start doing stuff. No, we need to understand what it is that you're trying to do and why, and we'll help you achieve that, right? We really try to become an extension of your team and work towards that common goal to make you successful. So yeah, we have a bunch of things that we can do, whether you're looking for best practice reviews, you want roadmap sessions, absolutely, we could do that, but none of that is of any value if it doesn't go towards what you're trying to achieve. So, putting my customer hat on, if I had a TAM, I think the way I'd get the most value right off the hop is have a regular cadence. Don't expect to necessarily hit the ground running, but make sure you develop that, relationship, that cadence, be able to say, here's what we're trying to achieve. Make sure the TAM understands why you're trying to achieve it. Are you trying to be, number one in your business? Are you trying to give people better customer experience? Relay all that stuff, because it really helps us as TAMs know where to focus, right? And that could come back to, hey, okay, you want to be better with customer support. You're having a lot of vSphere issues. We can see that from GSS, and we can help you get better uptime on your critical app systems that service your customers. That might be one way to bring metrics. Maybe it's a matter of you need better features. There's a feature request that would make your life easier. As a TAM, it's important to understand, once again, that business aspect of it. So, not to sound like a broken record, but, communication is absolutely one of the most important things, to build a healthy relationship with a TAM.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the magic words of feature request, and particularly, and I suppose to an extent that this does apply to VMware as well, because there are certain aspects of the VMware portfolio that are evolving faster than others. And if you're making use of those, and there's a feature that you want as an end user, and you have access to a TAM, your chances of getting that feature to happen just went up. Because you're going to have
dramatically gone up. Yeah.
Unless you've got Duncan Snapchat, it's it's probably going to be a little bit easier to go via your TAM.
Do you know what, Chris, actually, sorry, one thing to add with that is, if that feature request that customer X has just mentioned, as soon as we start discussing it within the TAM organization, I'm telling you now, customer Y would have actually had the same conversation, and you'd be surprised. Lots of customers all think pretty similar.
Yeah.
And we've got the power in numbers for that feature request.
Yeah, absolutely. And because when you're trying to persuade product management, if you can say, well, my customers that represent this much of our portfolio, they want this feature, and it's going to have this much impact, it makes it very, very easy from a product management perspective to go, right, when I'm picking my features, which ones am I going to do? Am I going to do this one, which is going to please exactly one guy, or am I going to make all of the TAMs happy and by extension all of their customers? It becomes a bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah, and just going back to your metrics conversation before, I mean, I think VMware has the same, so we track those in AHA as ideas. I don't know if VMware uses that as well. But yeah, you can build that case up to say that all of these customers wanted the same thing, more or less. Product team, can we do something about it? And as the TAM, you are the customer's voice to articulate why it's a good idea to introduce that. It'll make their life easier, it'll make our lives easier, makes everyone's life easier. Yeah, it's all good.
Okay, cool. So, whilst we're talking that sort of guide, how to use your TAM effectively, what's a few things that people shouldn't do with their TAM? What is a TAM not used for?
We are not a direct replacement for, global support, for example, right? We can definitely assist, help you do troubleshooting, and even help you get SRs open and all that sort of stuff, and tag along for the journey. But at the end of the day, going back to what we were saying earlier, we don't necessarily have that deep skill sets or the training. More importantly, we don't have the same tool sets available to a lot of our support folks. I've been through some, pretty rough cases, long-standing SRs, and through that, I've developed some great relationships with a lot of our tech support folks, and I've come to learn some of the values and some, gain access to some of the tools that they use internally. So sometimes I'll ask them, hey, open up an SR, upload the logs, I'll start taking a look while we get a TSC assigned, right? But at the end of the day, I'm not, a drop-in replacement for that. I can help ease the process somewhat, but I think that's a fairly common misconception that we might see when the TAM role isn't necessarily explained to its fullest when we go through, let's say, the original sales process.
Yeah, I think salesmen will say pretty much anything to get them to approve. Yeah, we'll throw in a TAM. They're like your on-site support. Actually,
no comment.
For legal reasons, that may or may not have happened.
I think the reason that happens is it's a double-edged sword, because as Matt's just alluded to over support, because the TAM is such a friendly face and an extension of the customer's team, they want you on board within the support request, which is fine. But as again Matt alluded to, we don't have the technical savvy to be able to do what GSS do. But it's good, but it's bad in another respect.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So
to that point, I think any other role that we mentioned throughout this as well, like I guess tech pre-sales, although as Matt said, we can ease those processes, we are not a replacement for those, because I mean those people in those roles are usually commission based, and you don't want to be stepping on people's toes doing that kind of role either. So you've got to be mindful of that on both sides.
Although, if you're helping someone else earn commission and you're not getting paid on it, then they're normally quite happy for you to do that kind of work.
Well, there is that side, yeah.
So what is it? Is there such a thing as a typical day in the life of a TAM? I don't think there is. I think it's definitely a job where no 2 days are the same. But if you could create a typical day for a TAM, what would it consist of?
Well, I'll start.
Yeah.
I mean, the start of my day is just going through those support tickets for my customer base, just make sure there's nothing lingering or nothing's blown up overnight that I haven't noticed. Keep ahead of something that might come my way, be proactive about it, and go back to the customer on it first and foremost. But after that, it is completely varied. I mean, I might be helping out with a health check for a product, or cadence call, looking at roadmap session, or building out quarterly business review decks, resource consumption, being that escalation point for support ticket. It's different every day.
Yeah. Anyone got any other sort of interesting sort of parts of that day in the life of a TAM? Obviously, modelling curtains in Dave's case.
I think the worst thing of the day, being honest, Chris, is waking up to an inbox, and that's the truth. I think, unfortunately, the last year, two years with the pandemic, I think we've just been mandated and dictated by calendars. Unfortunately, our inboxes are probably 10 times what they used to be. Again, look, today I'm quite lucky within the team. The UK TAM team. I'm one of the ones who's travelled, like Paul as well, actually, a good portion of the pandemic. While a lot of people have still not seen customers in 2 years, I've been reasonably consistent. So my day-to-day has included travelling, walking up the stairs 6 times to get 10 people from VMware into a building. And we've been discussing life cycle patching today, for instance, and design of a new lab. And that's not a typical day, but that's a day of doing something completely different. What Ian's just said, it can be a lot of meetings, by the way. People, if you don't like meetings, it may not be for you sometimes. But cadence design meetings, just the list goes on.
The one thing that I can never plan for is when I start going down the rabbit hole, and I'm sure a lot of the other TAMs can relate to this. I'm not even talking about chasing people down or anything. It's a matter of, I wonder how this feature request is doing. Chris, going back to what you're saying earlier, you open up Jira, for example, and it's like, it's tied to these 2 other ones, and you start going down those. And next thing you know, you're in Confluence looking at roadmaps and upcoming features, and here you are 2 hours later, and you haven't, you still don't know the actual status of that original feature request that you were looking at. So it's very, very easy.
You've seen some great mock-ups on for the next series of products.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's that's always an interesting bit. But so out of that day in the life, if there was something that you could change and you could not do about that day in the life, what would you change?
Ooh. Back-to-back Zoom meetings would be
mandatory coffee break in between.
Mandatory coffee breaks. Back-to-back. Yeah, I think this last 2 years I think there's people are going to have to change going into the next couple of years. Yeah, the way that people work is going to have to change. I mean, that's both as TAMs and customers. Back-to-back Zoom meetings is.
It can be pretty tiring, and until they invent 70-minute hours where those 10 extra minutes are untouchable. I
think, Chris, I think it was Matt who said before, change, I'm going to say shape instead of change, is the support thought about what a TAM does. Because yes, we do get involved with support cases. Yes, it's fine to do so, but sometimes they can be very consuming, and sometimes we're just somebody sat on the sideline while the TSE, technical support engineer, is doing the real meaty work, but the customer still wants us there, and that's fine. But I think sometimes you do end up as a little bit of a spare part when that time could be doing something more, more beneficial. I get why the customer wants it to happen. I think that's one of the things I wish we could change. Now, I've been in the business 6 years. I still haven't changed it, unfortunately. I tried to educate, but unfortunately, it's that friendly face and that friendly nature and that extension of a customer's team that they feel that there's a warm feeling that they've got their TAM involved, and that's fine. But I wish we could change that.
Yeah, I'll echo that in that it's unfortunate that quite often when TAMs get involved, it tends to generate, at least And quite often a better experience. Sometimes it might only be a perception of a speedier experience. So it's one of those, oh, you're doing a good job, here's more work for you, right? So that is a little bit of a drag. My initial answer is going to be, I wish I had a little bit more predictability in my day, in that, perfect world, yes, we've got all those Zooms back to back. Okay, at least I know what I'm doing for the day. It's when things go off the rails, right? Whether it's you get these surprise meeting invites show up, or there's some sort of customer emergency. And the emergency is not always a production down. It could be something like, hey, our legal team just realized we're not properly licensed for this. We need to get this resolved right now. And you're saying they're thinking, I'm not legal, right? Why are you talking to me type thing? So yeah, if I could choose one thing, it'd be, hey, here's my calendar, and that's actually what my day looks like every day.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll finish off with a section a bit about the TAM role as a career choice. Why might you want to become a TAM? From your current position. So, first one, do you think the TAM is actually no? I'll change my question to that's one I want to ask very last. What do you see the evolution of the role and the value of being a TAM in terms of career progression? So going beyond TAM Life, should you consider being a TAM as your next role, or actively look at TAM roles?
So I'll give an example of something I just had not considered at all. So, I mean, everyone on this call is in some way, shape or form focused on VMware. And I guess we all get hit up on LinkedIn for various roles, but having the TAM role associated with your LinkedIn profile, you see a whole host of other types of roles in completely different industries as a technical account manager. So, that's not something I ever considered, but I'm like, oh, actually, that's quite interesting. If I ever want to leave this space for some reason, I know as a TAM, I'll have that experience to apply somewhere else and, change career that way. So I think it's a good leap pad for that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of additional transferable skills that you pick up from being a TAM, which if you did want to pivot, not necessarily completely industry wide, but to maybe another aspect of the same industry, that those transferable skills can help be that pivot point.
Yeah, absolutely. I find myself regularly talking to VPs, CEOs, CIOs, CTOs, like all those senior leadership folks. And obviously we're not talking super deep technical stuff, but at the same time, through this role, I've been able to help kind of bridge that gap and understand, okay, why do you need these specific technologies to make you successful, and how do they make you successful? So I've been able to develop that sort of intermediary skill of being able to talk to the tech folks, the operations folks, if I need to, being able to talk to, the senior leadership folks. And, as somebody who's coming from a technical background, being able to talk to the senior leadership folks is an invaluable skill. Going back to career progression, that really does open up the door to other things. You take a look at a lot of CTO type roles where it's like, hey, here's a really cool technology. I understand it pretty good, maybe not at the full operational level, but I see how it could be applicable to our business and how it could be a game changer for us. So I think that was one of the biggest takeaways that I've had from the TAM journey so far, that I would have never even considered when I started this. Okay.
And we are almost out of time, so we'll go for some closing statements of, would you why did you would you choose the TAM Life for someone else? Would you choose it again if you had a do-over? So we'll start round the table with Dave.
Do you know what, Chris? Yes, even though I didn't know I have a clue what I was applying for, but hey, you know what? It was worth a punt, and I think I made a good gamble. What I will say is, I'm just me becoming a TAM. I didn't have a great deal of field-facing skills before I joined the TAM, even though I presented internally okay. If I hadn't become a TAM, I don't think I would have ever presented at any of the VMUGs, UK, Northwest, London. So yes, you know what, if you want a varied job, something that's different every day, lots of skills, yeah, technical, business, strategy, architectural, relationships, communication, it's definitely worth applying for and thinking about it. One thing I will say as a takeaway, you need thick skin. You need good soft skills. You've got to have good communication. You've got to be able to build relationships, not just business, at a personal level as well, because that's how you make things work with your customers. However, the TAM is a venting board for customers. So some days can be a bit heated. It's never personal. It's only business. You need to be able to have thick skin and accept sometimes you should get a bit of a moaning at you because things do go wrong.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dave. Paul?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like Dave said, you've got to have all these different personas as well. You manage your own time. That's the best thing I like about it. It's not, you're not going to the same desk every day. It's a different customer every day. It's a different challenge every day, and it's a rewarding career. I mean, seeing your customers succeed, especially following the advice that you've given them, it gives you a great buzz. And yeah, I can see myself being in the TAM role for a considerable amount of time, perhaps until I retire, which is not far away.
I'll hold you to that. I'll hold you to that, Paul. Yeah, that's my.
Cool. Matt?
I've had really no regrets taking the TAM role. I think it's been a huge boost to my career. Unfortunately, I probably have more time, work time left in my life than I want. Will I be a TAM forever? Who knows? But I think it's absolutely opened the door to so many different areas, whether I want to go back into deeper technical side of things, whether at VMware or somewhere else. I still kind of have a hand in that pot, so to speak, whether I want to go more so on the business side, like I was mentioning earlier, CTO, CIO, all that sort of stuff. If that's something I aspire for, I think this role has absolutely given me skills to progress that way as well.
Brilliant. Finishing off with Ian.
Yeah, well, everything that's just been said is true. The thick skin, certainly, the soft skills, technical skills. I mean, the TAM role, personally, I found is what you make of it. I think one of the other advantages that we haven't touched on is you have the ability to get hands-on with anything that the company sells or distributes. I don't know if that's the same at VMware. So if you want to, you can still keep hands-on with the tech, which helps you to move back into a tech role if you wanted to do that. Being empathetic helps as well. Just appeasing those people who are, having a rant in the ear. But as Dave said, it's never personal. The next time you talk to them, it'll be all smiles and laughs and everything. It's just, these things happen. So, yeah, I think it was absolutely a great move. I think, as most people on the call have said, that I found them, or we kind of stumbled across it, not really thinking about it. But I would certainly consider it, especially if you've been in like a support role or a deep technical role. Maybe as you want to come up for air. So I mean, I've been in support, and I know what the constant drone, bing, 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 support. Look at these tickets is like. You don't realize how stressful that is until you come away from something like that. So, if you're finding yourself in that situation, maybe a little burnt out in your current role.
That's a very, very interesting observation, Ian. I mean, as a support person, you only ever hear about the dark side of the moon. You're only ever spoken to when things are going badly. Whereas as a TAM, you have a bit more of an opportunity to see what happens when things are going right. And that, to me, I think is quite a reward, because you actually get to see. It gives you a more positive opinion about the products and the company you're working for, because when you work in support and things aren't great and you're getting hammered with tickets left, right, and center, it can give you a bit of a negative opinion about the company's products. Whereas when you're actually seeing success and you're seeing those products doing what they were intended to do, it's a very different psychological approach.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And with that, I think we've hit our time. There's been some really good, seen some engagement in the chat. I don't see any specific questions, but let's open it up and see if anyone's got any things that they wanted to add or.
So I got one. So if I'm a VMware customer and I don't already have one, where do I go to buy a TAM?
So Sam, if you're a VMware customer, you'll have an account team.
I mean, is that? I mean,
or come and speak to me. There you go.
There's a website called TAM Bay. You just bid on it.
I'm being slightly facetious. I work in large organizations, so I'm very familiar with that. That's right. But certainly for customers that are maybe not quite so large, or maybe fall into some of the smaller industry verticals. I mean, do they still have the ability to call on a TAM, or if they want one, can they buy one?
Yeah. So I'm quite unique in the UK, Sam, and I have the MSP/VCP partners. So I have a couple of them. They're small. It doesn't matter who they are, but very small companies, and we're talking tiny. They will have a partner manager that is aligned to them, because that's how they pay for their VMware products as well. From Point Systems, they can just go and request to go and have a conversation about a TAM. So I do have two of them, and they're very, very small slices, basically. So it doesn't matter what you are. If the customer can invest within the TAM, then they can have a TAM, as far as I know. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Your AE and SE is probably the easiest way.
Yep.
They'll be more than happy to get you a TAM. That's all I'm going to say on the matter.
Well done, Gareth.
Yeah, from my standpoint, because I mentioned at Ireland, it's quite often a bit more of a value add than a paid for service or a slice of the pie of your time. There are some occasions where we'll step in, it's not an account that would typically be aligned with a TAM, but if it's just to explain something or give a demo of a product or something like that where I can help out, then absolutely I'm going to jump in and help out on that. So just another one of those many hats.